Okay, good afternoon, everyone on the Talented People Facebook page. I hope you're there. We can't see you, but you can see us, I hope. It is lovely to have you with us this afternoon. Thank you for joining. I know how busy lots of people are, so whether we're in a little box in the background of your screen or otherwise, we're glad to have you with us. Yeah, welcome to the event. This is a session completely on the world of production management. And as you mainly all know, the current challenges that production managers of all levels and the companies trying to recruit them are facing, and what we can all be doing to help with positive change in the area. So please say hello in the comments and add your thoughts into the discussion as it unfolds, and I'll keep my eye on them and try and include as many as we can. Just as a few more people join, for those of you who don't yet know us, Talented People is a production staffing company, an executive search company, and we work with production companies and online content producers to find them off-screen talent, whether it's production, editorial, development, execs. So if you're new to us and you hadn't yet found us until you saw this event, then please do send us your CV. You can find the link to our website. I'll stick it in the box below, but it's talentedpeople.tv, and on the jobs board there's a send us your CV link. So even if you haven't updated it for a while, you don't need to be free. You don't need to be available for years, as many of you are not. We would like to know about you so we can get to know you. It's completely free. So yes, Talented People run these sessions every couple of weeks around lunchtime normally. There's lots of other ones previously on the website, so go and have a look at them. They've been a really fun and I hope informative resource over the past sort of year and a half now. Can't quite believe that. So anyway, on with the session. Our guests for the production management session today are Tamara Howe, who is consulting with Fatima at Naked at the moment. Hi, Tamara.
Hi.
Vanessa Tovell, COO at Lightbox. Hello. Nicola Hirsch, head of production at Workerbee. Hi, Nicola. Jamie Stratton, who's a freelance production manager.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And Faraz Osman, who is the MD of Indie Goldwaller. Hello, Faraz. Right then, big topic, less than an hour now after my waffle. Where do we start? So I'm conscious that the article that went pretty massive on broadcast that I wrote about not doing a disservice to production managers was a bit of a shock, to be honest. I was completely overwhelmed at how many people reacted to that, and I wanted to get your thoughts about why right now has that hit such a nerve, and why have we got so much momentum now in lots of people shouting about this production management situation, which I sort of thought had been bubbling on for a long time. Who wants to offer an opinion on that? Why now? Go ahead, Tamara.
I'd say timing is everything, I think, in this instance, because let's be honest, production managers or ex-production managers around this table will know this conversation isn't new. It's been going on as long as I can remember, issues around recognition, disparity on pay, lack of investment in talent pipeline. So it's not a new conversation. I think, as with many things, COVID has kind of exacerbated issues that were already there. And, you've now got a community on one side who have literally reached the end of their tether in terms of the workload they've been taking on, the responsibility and the stresses that have been happening in the past year. So I think on the one hand, you've got a community that for the first time, really, community who's been speaking internally about these things for a long time is willing to speak out about them. And then on the other side, you've got an industry who are seeing this massive sort of issue around demand outweighing supply, and suddenly realizing how integral production management is to them, and they're willing to listen. So you've got this kind of perfect storm. I think you used the word perfect storm in your article, where you've got production management ready to speak up, and you've got the rest of the community going, listen, we hear what you're saying and we want to move forward. So I think that's why it's had the impact it has.
Jamie, what would you...
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Jamie, you were going to say something at the beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree with Tamara. I think it's hit a nerve with a lot of people. As Tamara says, I think people have been talking about it for a very long time, but after the last 18 or so months, frustrations are really high, and your article came at a good time. And it's also really busy out there at the moment, and people are struggling to find production managers, production coordinators. This isn't just about production managers, I must add as well. This is about production secretaries all the way through to heads of production. And there's a frustration about just getting someone, about employing people. But also, again, Tamara touched on it. I think there's a lot more respect out there than maybe there has been in the past for production management departments. So after the last 18 months, people have realised that actually, without us, the last 2 years, the TV industry would have been absolutely buggered.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a bit of a shocker that it took a global pandemic, though, for all these things to kind of come together, because as Tamara said, people have been talking about this issue for a long time, right, Ness? But who needs to be listening?
Well, I mean, all I was going to add, I completely agree. All I was going to add to that was that it was refreshing to have somebody who's not a production manager or part of the production management team sort of speak up for us. And it's not that we haven't been speaking up for ourselves, but I think it's very difficult. What we do is not particularly the glamorous side of the industry. It can be seen as quite boring individually. Some of the things that we do are a little bit boring in one respect, but they're vital. And I think it's very difficult to get people to pay attention to the fact that, you know, the job is difficult and varied and tough when there's nothing particularly glitzy. So it's nice to have a spokesman or somebody who wrote an article that's coming from the outside looking in on our world. And I also think over the last couple of years, there's been more discussion, not just because of the pandemic, but outside of that, there's been more discussion about harassment. There's been more discussion about the gender pay gap, because it's I think Jamie put it in his letter, it's not a coincidence that the majority of the production side of the industry is female. And I think that there's been more discussion about duty of care. So I think there's more space, or I hope there's more space for people to be able to say, hey, listen, I'm doing stupid hours, can I have some help? And that's also within the industry. I think that's important. But yeah, we've got to get people to listen. And I think it's, you know, all of us have had this conversation for years and years and years, and we need to figure out who needs to listen to this. Jamie's talking about the broadcasters, but I also think that it's the creative side of the industry. I slightly struggle with the idea that production management is not creative. I think we are very creative. Some of my budgets are a work of fiction. And I think that it's important that we figure out how to try and open up this conversation and try and bring people in who have previously not maybe been listening.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm going to say it, Faraz. So Faraz is our editorial person here. I was really keen to involve someone editorial on this panel, because it should not be a them and us, should it? Nessa's already said, you know, it's, you guys are all creative, but I'd be interested to hear. I mean, Faraz has got a brilliant head of production, and he's very supportive in his small indie Goldwalla. But I mean, how do you feel, Faraz? I mean, you're sort of sitting there going, I know I'm not a head of production or a production manager.
Well, I mean, you know, we've been making jokes about it, and I have been, you know, jokingly pulling faces about it. But my view is quite simple, and that is that particularly small production companies are a team. And a good team should have lots of different people with different skills, and each of those people should have respect for each individual skills. So there are things that I do that the production side of the company doesn't do. There are things that the production side of the company does that I couldn't even begin to understand. And I think that there are a number of companies which I've been involved in as well. There have been other places where creatives have ruled the roost, and like the MDs have all been creatives, and that's kind of the way it's worked. And that I've always been quite nervous about that, because I'm a little bit like, well, why get into bed with somebody that already does what you do? Actually, a decent production company needs to have that balance. And I've always believed that if we kind of make sure that the show gets thought of and the show gets made, the two things have to work symbiotically, because if they don't, what's the point of a production company? That's what a production company is meant to do. So I've always believed that. And then when I met my director of production, Jess, we just kind of completely hit it off, because she understood where my value was. I absolutely understood where her value was and the teams that she was working. And that is kind of the company that we're trying to build as a result of that. But my kind of biggest view is that particularly where we are right now, and you kind of mentioned earlier about why this has hit a nerve at the moment, like where we are right now is that the mad issues around everything from the racial reckoning to the mental health crisis and obviously COVID have had to be dealt with by production management, right? It's not the creative side of the business that have done that. And what's curious about what's happened is that production managers is a job, but for whatever reason, number one, because the budget's being cut, and it means that coordinators and secretaries are less likely to be included in budgets because we need to make savings everywhere. Production have had to do more and more things, but still be core production managers. And I don't think that certain people from commissioners, and certainly my side of the table, are really actually respecting the amount of work that has been added to the job description of production. And that is from insurance to COVID to keeping things running to HR to all of these things are now, particularly in a small production company, are all run by production that really need kind of sometimes 10, 15 people to be running those jobs because they're all specialist skills, but they've just been tacked on. Another little bit has been tacked onto a production manager job. Another little bit has been tacked onto a production manager job. And it happened in editorial. We had this thing where you had a researcher and then you had a shooting researcher and then you had a shooting researcher that can also edit and then you had predators. It did happen in editorial. There's no denying that. But I think that we're starting to see specialism come back into creative. And I think that we need to mirror that within production as well, because I don't think it's sustainable to ask one person to do all of those things while trying to, effectively run a budget and a schedule and land a plane on time and on budget.
And get paid exactly the same. And actually, I think there's obviously so many different things at play here that there are kind of three main headlines that we should address. And there's obviously sort of subfolders in each one. But one is pay and the pay difference between production and editorial, or just even not necessarily comparing them, just the pay that production management is on. 2, the shortage of people versus jobs, so just simply not enough people in the production management stream. And 3 is retaining them. How are we keeping them? Because the shortage is twofold, isn't it? It's because there's not enough people coming in, but there's also people leaving. So how are we then keeping and retaining talent? So I think that we can probably, should we talk about one at a time? Because I do think that there are things there that are being done or that we can talk about. And the fact that this conversation is completely open now is just brilliant. So pay, I mean, Jamie, I know obviously you are doing something very practical about this. Tell us what you're up to.
Next week we are publishing an open letter directed at all the major UK and international broadcasters. We are speaking with 2 massive organisations in the TV industry. I don't want to say who yet, to get their backing, and a third one as well. So it's really, really exciting. And so we are proposing how we think that rates should be equal or comparable across editorial and production. The key thing for me personally, I'm only 10 years in, or nearly 10 years in, so I've still got a lot of enthusiasm. I don't mind late nights. I don't mind working all the time. I know that it's not good, but I don't mind doing that. The thing that pisses me off is the money, and I run budgets, and I always make sure that budgets come on or under, and I work really, really hard to do that. But when you're saying that people who have been working in telly for a lot less time than you are getting paid more money than you, it's really, really frustrating. And you're constantly battling with freelancers who are trying to push up their rates all the time. And the money, it's not always in the budget, but it's allowed for. It seems to be allowed that we can spend an extra couple of £100 on this editor, or an extra couple of £100 on this PD. Somehow it's allowed, but that never filters through to production management. It's really tricky. So we are, we've got a one-page letter which has been seen so far by lots of people in important places, and it's been published next week. There'll also be an article going out in broadcast early next week, another one to follow up your one and my one. I think
how do people find that, Jamie, the letter, to read it?
Well, good question. Well, as I say, it'll be published. A link to the letter will be published in broadcast when it goes out. I don't know. It'll be Tuesday or Wednesday next week. and social media, my post got a lot of shares and a lot of reactions. So I'm hoping it gets shared around quite a lot.
Okay.
We're also, sorry, just another ad, we're also talking to a lot of indies, and there's a few of us working behind this, it's not just me. We're talking with indies, heads of indies, and trying to get their backing as well before the letter goes out, and just to say this is going to be heading your way. Yeah.
In terms of pay though, oh sorry, go on Nicola.
So people are definitely talking about it, because I was talking to a broadcaster yesterday who's already started to talk about how we moved the rates up. Previously, I'm not going to say who they were, but previously they were all capped.
Wow,
that is massive progress.
So it's definitely, people are really talking about it and they're really aware of it. So I think hopefully things will get better.
Yeah.
Overnight.
And Nicola, you're head of production at a little regional indie, aren't you? So how do you find writing? Because the irony is you're writing your own budgets for people.
It's really hard, and you put higher rates in and they get knocked back all the time, and it's disheartening. But and also, you know, you knock out the secretary and you knock out the coordinator and make it work, and then you realise that actually we need all those people. We do. It's and what's highlighted that the sort of problem massively is the fact that we haven't got enough production managers, and so when that person's gone, you see what they do, whereas when they're there and it's all working smoothly, it's really hard to see, you know.
Right. So is it almost a case that it's a sort of invisibility?
Yeah, I think. Well, if you haven't got a production manager, it causes all sorts of problems. It all comes to the front. You see exactly what they do and exactly what they manage and all the problems they sort out. So I think just the lack of people.
The invisibility is really key, I think. I think you can't point to what the production team to do when you see something on the screen. You know what the DOP has done, the costume, the director, the producers. You can see what they've done. You can't see what production has done. You can only, so it's not that makes us invisible. And I think also we only really become visible because our job is to make sure that everything is smooth. So we only really become visible when things go wrong. So, and then that's a bad reason to be visible. So it's yes, I think the invisibility is a problem. It's necessary, but it's also a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the last time I watched a program. I thought, oh, that was so well production managed. You know, you just sort of don't, because you expect it.
You can't know.
You know what? I don't know if I agree with that. And look, we are all working in the industry, so we have got a better idea of like what people do and the roles are. But I think that there are more and more complicated shows which audience are going, how did they do that? So you look at Race Around the World, you look at kind of the Secret Life of 4-year-olds, you look at even Love Island, which is going on now. Like people, I think, watching Love Island, kind of going, but how? Like during COVID, how have all those people ended up? They don't know each other, but they're all soggy. What is going on? And more often than not, that is a production management role. It's figuring out how to do these creative ideas safely and sensibly in a way that can keep the show on the road. And I actually think that we are getting to a point where more and more people are respecting the like you said earlier, Nessa. It's like respecting the creativity of how production management have gone, right, that's a really interesting idea. Hunted, for instance, really interesting idea. That's not necessarily a creative solution about how you allow all those things to work. It's actually a schedule issue. It's a management issue. It's a people issue. That I was reading the article the other day about Too Hot to Handle, which is they had to set up a whole separate production to keep the contributors in the dark about what was going on there. That's production management. All of that is, none of that's to do with creative. Somebody in production management would have gone, well, let's just set up another production company and we'll do it over here. You don't see that on screen, but it's still part of the story about how that show got made. And I think we're getting to the point where the industry, from awards and conversations at big panels, etc., are going to start recognizing that actually some of the most interesting stories are coming out of how these shows are getting made from behind the scenes, and not just, that's an amazing costume, that's an amazing bit of sound design.
Well, that's a really good point, isn't it, Tamara?
So yeah, I hear what Faraz is saying to agree, because a lot of this stuff is about public recognition as well, isn't it? Wider recognition, because we've all worked in teams where we're really valued. Whether that's as a head of production in a business or as a production manager or a line producer. You're often the sort of right-hand person to the creative, and they you know, they don't sometimes won't move an inch without you, and they give you all the credit when you're working together and you're kind of the nucleus in the team. I think a lot of it's also down to the, you know, lack of recognition on the sort of more public stage, you know, whether it's rarely featured in the pages of broadcast. I think that's another big thing. Your article was in broadcast about us, and often we're not featured in those pages. When we don't sit on panels at industry events unless we're talking about production management, but we have views on diversity, we have views on SVODs, you know. So I think there are lots of areas, whether that's award ceremonies that we should look at and review, on BAFTA, RTS, where are we celebrated, that we're not getting the recognition. So it's not,
that feeds into the fact that then people don't know about us, and so they don't come into the industry, and so it feeds into that, which is so it's all tied together.
Yeah, it's about, and elevating us, right? Yeah. Elevating us in people's minds and hearts, but also just publicly in terms of understanding. You know, I was looking on
there are good things in it too.
yeah, huge good things. But I was looking when I was thinking about this, looking on site, and I came across a site which is like, is production management for me? I was like, okay, this is good. And then there were 4 images that they used to represent production management. One of them was a pile of highlighter pens. One of them was 2 stickies, one that said, find Lou, the other one that said, I tell no lie, the other one said, book cab. The other one was a picture of a notepad with a to-do list. And the last one was a pile of files. I thought, why the hell would that excite you about production management if you were somebody thinking about joining the industry? And I thought, but that's not true. That's not what it's like. And I thought back to all the things I used to do. But the reality is there is a little bit of truth in that, because a lot of the gripes I hear from production management community is the point that you were making earlier about that layer upon layer of compliance related work, whether that's Diamond, Albert, COVID now, health and safety. The job that's getting less sexy, let's be honest about this, you know. And I used to go out on shoots. I used to get on planes and visit wonderful places. You know, I'd be in the heart of the studio, and a lot of production management are stuck in the office. They're, you know, weighed down by paperwork, and that can vary massively depending on what kind of company you're in. And so I think we need to review the roles and try and bring back some of the more of the creative aspects to it, which is why most people get into this industry in the first place.
Well, would an idea then be to get more cohesion between editorial and production in meetings, you know, that aren't necessarily production management involved, but to get you guys in the room? Is that something that would sort of help with that? Because as you say, Tamara, you have views, you don't need to just be asked about.
I would always expect to be in the room when I was on productions. I would always go to into edit suites onto shoots. I think that's the only way that you can, that's one way of building your credibility within the editorial team. And you have something to say. You're a viewer after all, you know, you're not just a production manager, production coordinator, you're actually somebody with an opinion on content too.
So that's something that companies could be doing right now, is involving production management more, you know, from junior to senior. I'm waving my highlighter pen now that you said about highlighter pens. But and also I think would promote self-value, right, and feeling like needed and respected in terms of your opinion, which is something that we can talk about when we're coming to like retaining talent. But as you touched on how the job is perceived to the outside world, Tamara, let's talk about the shortage of junior people coming through. Yeah, we've still got a shortage at PM and LP and product exec level, but let's talk about getting people into the industry then, because perhaps people think it's one thing but it's not, or perhaps are we recruiting people from the wrong place? I mean, Nicola, tell us about how you find your junior production people.
I was talking to my team the other day actually, and I've realised that quite a few of them we've sort of scooped up from bars, being bar managers, hospitality, you know, people, and it's really transferable and brilliant. They're brilliant people, you know, people, and can solve problems, are great with money. But it's just finding those right people, and also, you know, giving them the confidence to try something that they think is not possible, because we're so closed. It's a very closed industry, and people who want to go into telly quite often just want to be researchers and directors, and they don't realise this is something they can do. But
Well, I do wonder if actually, you know, the reason that we don't have these people coming through is that we're not looking for them in the right places. An exec that I know, Cal Turner, hello Cal, if you're watching, she feels very strongly that, you know, the reason that we don't get the right people in the stream of production is that we're looking at media and film studies graduates or people who've gone to film school, who've gone there because they want to do editorial stuff, they want to direct films, and then we're trying to sort of scoop them out accidentally. Oh, actually you'd be better this way, and they're like, well, I don't know. And you know, and actually, should we not be looking at other industries entirely? I mean, Nicola's already said hospitality. I've had a couple of meetings in the last couple of weeks because people have got in touch with us saying, my friends in the travel industry, which is a bit buggered right now, and they'd be really interested in look at all of their transferable skills. You know, is that where we should be looking?
I think transferable skills is really you know, a key area for us, particularly as we're in a bit of a mess at the moment, and we need to accelerate bringing people in, and not bringing people in at really junior levels. You know, try and bring them in at a more senior level, and convert them with some sort of fast track training and support. So most definitely the events arena, mentioned bars, but we should be looking more broadly. And we also need to think about the kind of contracts we're giving people, because why would you jump from one industry to the next if it's going to be a 3-month contract? You know, we have to think about that too. Yeah.
So the longevity of contract is important, isn't it, to support people, and also then moving on to sort of nurturing and training people. You can't do that if you're brought in to hit the ground running and only have 2 months to do so.
That's the hard thing. It's really, really difficult to progress when everything's so stretched and everyone's got no time and everyone's under pressure. The last thing anyone needs is someone who doesn't know what they're doing. But we're going to have to do that, I think, to bring more people through the industry, and not just really green juniors who are, you know, 18. We need people who have got life skills and can deal with all the, you know, the pressures, the difficult things on a daily basis that people have to deal with, all the mental health issues and, you know, all the COVID and all the stress. And everyone's had a hard 2 years. So everyone's at their limit. I think that's the problem. Everyone's at their limit, and that's why we've lost so many people. Yeah.
I have to say, we've had a couple of really brilliant, satisfying job roles that we've been working on where we've taken people from a different industry, or they've done a bit of telly in the past, then moved into something else, but we've had to do quite a lot of, you know, work to pitch them. And I would really plead to anybody in a hiring position to really look at transferable skills, to not just judge on the last few credits. You know, you're probably not right now going to get someone for your dates, for your production, who's done exactly the right thing. And that's not a bad thing. You know, finding people who have, you know, got other life experience is brilliant. And I would really appeal to anyone who's got friends in different industries or has got a different job or thinking about re-entering the workplace after mat leave or a break for whatever reason, that we need you, and we're happy to help you into the right thing. And I just want, you know, employers to feel that they can support that sort of transitional stage.
Yeah, I think that, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned mat leave, which makes me think about, you know, the whole COVID thing. I mean, we are predominantly female discipline in terms of the people who work in production management, and the amount of mothers who must have been at home juggling not only COVID, small kids, homeschooling. I mean, that has to have been a contributing factor for a lot of our teams. And so going forward, you know, really thinking about how people return to work, how flexible we are with people, I think is really, really, really important too, so that people aren't stepping out of the industries. I'm sure quite a few people have moved because the stress of family and TV, it just became unbearable during the last 18 months.
Yeah, I was going to actually, it's similar to what I was going to mention, and actually we as a company have managed to attract some incredible talent because we've been able to be flexible. And it's not just to do with mat leave, it's to do with other considerations about why people don't necessarily want to work 5 days a week, and what we can be doing as a company to be flexible about individual reasons why people don't necessarily want to work a 9 to 5 and a Monday to Friday. Because to be honest, that was one of the original attractions of working in TV in the first place, is because it wasn't a standard job. But kind of going back to the original chat about transferable skills, I think part of the crisis that we've got right now is that production managers have probably the most transferable skills out of the whole of our industry. So if you're a camera operator, or you're a researcher, or you're an AP, you might be great at making a TV program, but if there's no work in that space, there's limited choices you have to go elsewhere. Whereas if you went up to any company now and said, oh, well, in my previous role, I looked after Brexit negotiations about how I can distribute my show internationally. I dealt with HR issues. I dealt with budgets and making sure everything was landing on time and on schedule. And I dealt with personalities that were very, very tricky. That is like a dream interview scenario in any industry. And I think that as we continue to have this dual issue around budgets being squeezed across the board, and this conversation around respect and how much respect that the production side of the business is getting, I don't think it's any surprise that a decent production manager, or even a decent production coordinator, is going, is TV the right industry for me? So it's not just about transferable skills of getting people from other industries into our industry. We also need to really be chatting about retention of who we have right now, and making sure that the really great people that are working in the roles and have delivered great shows are continuing to want to stay in the industry that we have. And I think, Jake, I totally hear the conversation about money, and I think that that's really relevant. But for me, this conversation isn't just about money; it's about respect. And it's people like me that, like, I don't deal with money. Like, I'm terrified of it. I'm not very good at it. That's why I've got an amazing production team, because, like, when I find somebody I want to work with, I'm that guy. I am that awful person that kind of goes, can you go do the deal, please? Because, like, can you go and have that horrible conversation about money? And then the production management will have that conversation. And, you know, they are running budgets. They can, and that's why part of the frustration exists, because they can see how much other people are getting paid. Because I think it's quite rare. This series producers, certainly APs and researchers, will never get to see the budget. So they don't know what all of these different rates are. So I don't think it's on them to kind of go, oh, well, this person's getting paid more than me, but they're more junior. I genuinely think that if you simply wouldn't be aware of it and wouldn't know how to fix it, because people on that side of the table, they don't see it as part of what their skills are. So I think that, like, we need to get to a point where we are allowing people to get paid properly for the work they do. There's no doubt about that, but also making sure that we can do what we can to give them the level of respect so that we can keep them working in this industry and keep them excited about the work that they do. Because, like, my view, and this is kind of the biggest thing that is happening from where I'm sitting, is that good production management, if you invest in it early, they will bring shows in on budget and they will bring shows in on time. Bad production management means that you will overrun and you will go over budget, and it will be far more expensive, not just for you as a production company, but for broadcasters as well, and commissioners as well. And it really needs to be understood that this top slicing of secretaries and junior production management, etc., is going to cause real issues with the actual bottom line, not of an individual budget that's submitted, but actually how much a program really costs at the end of the day. Because it's the broadcasters and commissioners you're going to go back to say, sorry, if you want your show, we're going to need to find some more money, because we didn't have, you know, it wasn't resourced properly in the first place.
One thing I wanted to say on that is that I don't think that when projects overrun and when projects go over budget, I don't think that it can be squarely laid at the production manager's door.
God, no, sorry, that's absolutely, sorry, that you're absolutely right.
It
I'm not saying that.
Bad production management can sometimes come in on time too. But yeah, and when things overrun, it actually is often because the editorial is changing or more challenging, or lots of other things too.
Absolutely, and that is really important. And you know what? More often than not, it's because a creative has got ambitions that weren't able to be realistically fulfilled. But my point is that when something changes, that's when things overrun, you know, because of a COVID situation, or because of a health situation, or because somebody has got another job and has had to go elsewhere, and production management then has to step in and solve that issue. And if you have really great production management, they will efficiently and creatively solve those problems. That means that you can continue to keep the show on the road, because that's what's been happening until now. And so this earlier investment in production management, I think, will have a long-term positive impact on the bottom line of both production companies and of broadcasters.
Well, what you say, when you say earlier, Faraz, one of the challenges that I see with productions going over a lot of the time is that mismatch between the editorial ambition and the budget. And often production management might not be as involved in the earlier development conversations, when these projects are signed up to and the feasibility is all done and they're presented with a fait accompli. So I think having them in the conversation much earlier to sort of kick the tires on commissions before they get signed off is a good thing.
It's interesting that what you said about series producers. A lot of series producers don't even see the budgets anymore. I mean, would it not be, I would love to know what would happen if everybody knew at least the brackets of what people were paid, you know, editorial and production. I mean, is there a world where that could happen, and would that be helpful?
Personally, I don't think it'd be helpful right now, because production management are getting paid so significantly less than editorial, which means that series producers will be like, oh, well, they are obviously junior because they're getting paid less. And I think it will kind of exacerbate the problem. I think that the issue is not necessarily with production companies and budgets, because once they are signed off, that's when they go into action, and that's when you start hiring those people. It's about what Jamie's doing right now, about getting it in earlier and changing the perception of what the rate of a production manager should be and what's genuinely expected of their job description.
Because I do think a lot of editorial people had no idea that production was paid so much less. I honestly think people did not know that until recently.
They really don't. This is another thing that's really, really frustrating. And a lot of productions that I've worked on, it might be different in other places, but I often sit with a series producer and we are sort of running this production sort of side by side. But the discrepancy, the disparity, sorry, between rates is just unbelievable. And I think a lot of people on sort of more junior levels would look at us at the sort of same level and would not believe the difference in pay. So I think if people want to find rates, there are rate cards out there. There are very few out there for the PMA are soon to publish a rate card, which I've seen it myself, and it is sort of floating around, and they're going to publish it at some point. But again, it goes back to the broadcasters. You could put on a rate card that you're going to earn £1 million a day, but actually, if the money's not there, then it's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. The rate card needs to go out, and the rates need to go up, but it needs to come from the top. It needs to come from these broadcasters, and there are indies out there who I'm sure if a broadcaster gave the same amount of money would disperse it in their own way, and that's fine. You can do that based on your experience or whatever. But at least if we know that the broadcasters are paying the same amount of money, or they're paying fair wages, we know then it's the indies that are causing the problem, and that'll be the next campaign. I
think what we
are behind this.
But I think sort of bringing it back to what we can all be doing. Yes, I think, you know, the letter and making broadcasters aware and finding more money from that point of view is good. I also think we should be a lot more transparent about what people are paid. You know, people like us can help with that, because we sort of know what market rate is or what seems fair, and we can tell our clients that, and we can also help freelancers, you know, with what they think they should be paid. So there's that, I suppose. But I just think talking about it more is important. We're so British about it, aren't we? And even this hopefully has been helpful for people to know where we're at. What about retention then? I think that would be good to bring this on to retaining people. So we're losing people. We've already said that all levels of production management, from ProdSec, if those roles exist, up to, you know, heads of production, have been overloaded with extra responsibilities. What does that look like? And, you know, what are those extra responsibilities, and why have they been loaded onto PMs? And then how can we help sort of alleviate some of that pressure, do we think? Nicola, do you want to go for that?
I think because they're so overworked, and also everyone's been working from home, and the pressures of working from home have been huge for everybody across the board. I think all we can do, I mean, I don't get it right all the time, but all I can try to do in my company, for example, is to just take some of the smaller pressures off the PMs to make it a bit easier. You know, little things like taking payroll from them and their productions, little small things that we can do just to alleviate the pressure, keep everyone working as a team and covering each other and sharing and being a little, you know, gang, you know, to get through it, because it's so hard, being able to ask silly questions. And I think that's the only way you can make their jobs easier at the moment. You know, the money's not there yet to give the pay rises they'd all deserve. The money's just not there yet, and that hopefully will follow. But I think it's just supporting them and trying all you can to shout that they are doing possibly the hardest job at the moment, and it's not getting easier quickly. I don't know.
Maybe there's something to be done also around creating a sort of junior type role in acknowledgement of all of this extra compliance stuff, which is now literally a job in its own right when you talk to people. You think about, say, when we went digital in terms of camera cards, you know, the wrangler role suddenly came out of nowhere. You know, so what's our equivalent that we could put into the production team that takes some of that stress off? And it, you know, it can be an entry level role that you know, they can be seen as a stepping stone, but then allows the coordinators and production managers to focus on the stuff that makes the job attractive and take off some of the, you know, the weight of, you know, paperwork and bureaucracy, which is becoming, I think, quite overwhelming. Disproportionate amount of your job is spent worrying about that stuff, and you're not really adding as much value when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, PMs are having to deal with everything now, from legal and compliance to, you know, sometimes archive specialists, to mental well-being, to, you know, the whistleblowing stuff now, and COVID responsibilities, aren't they? I mean, there was a role, or is a role now, of COVID supervisor, I believe. Is that, I mean, has that in your experience been just added onto a PM, or has that been funded as a separate role?
Separate, it's funded separately, but they tend to go out on the shoots. They're not necessarily sitting, this is a massive show, they won't be sitting with the production the whole time.
It also slightly depends on the productions as well. I mean, it does get lumped onto the production managers and the production teams in terms of just figuring out what that's going to be. If you're in factual, it's off. There is often not a separate COVID super, or not the money for a separate COVID supervisor to go out on shoots. But that does get shared with the producers who are going out on the shoots as well. But it will be the production team that put in place what those protocols are and kind of figure it out.
Yeah. So there are some things that we could potentially help to take off the production stream, like Nicola is saying about payroll, etc. And actually, I'm going to start looking at some comments in a minute. And we've had lots of people chatting.
Can I just say, Kimberly, just while you're doing that, can I just say that includes what you guys are doing at Talented People, right? Yes. So I know, like, I'm not just saying this because I'm on this call, but actually, and you know that you and I had this conversation for a while. It's a little bit like, well, you know, part of our USP is that we know the right people, and we kind of, but actually, as soon as we started working with you, the pressure that was relieved off kind of doing that search, actually, that was a huge burden on production, that it's a bit like, we need a PD on this, quick, how do we go? And so there are resources, you know, for COVID stuff. We've been working with Beyond Dispute. We've got business affairs people that we freelance out to a company we work with called Mint & Co. There are lots of kind of all of these little boutique places that are popping up to help production, particularly solve some of these issues. But my view is that actually it is not being communicated with channels. From where I'm sitting and what I've seen, when these issues arise, it's almost like the channels are going, you need COVID insurance, go sort that out and go figure it out. Or, you know, we were doing some work in some children's work recently, and there's lots of conversations about tax breaks, and like the channel, they're as helpful as they can be, but a lot of the time it's a bit like, go and speak to somebody that's done it previously. And this is what production, from where I've seen, have been incredible, because the network of people talking to each other and sharing knowledge is exceptional. It's far better than it is in editorial. We don't share knowledge anywhere near as well as you guys do when it comes to kind of going, how do I solve this problem? How do I get this person here? How do I book something over here? What can I do to solve this issue? Can you get me translation, etc.? The network of people talking to each other is massive, but that network, I think, needs to be interfaced properly with channels, so that if there are things that the channels can do, exactly like what Nicola was saying, if there are things that can be done where we can find shortcuts that benefit the whole industry, it's silly that lots of small independent production companies are doing this in their own little silos. It should be coming from the channel where they're like, this is an issue coming down the road. Let's take COVID, for example. How can we all work together to create a pool that allows you to go to the channel and say, right, you want a COVID super, I'm using this as an example, it's not a perfect analogy, but you want a COVID supervisor. We know what you need because we've worked with you as production manager to solve that issue. Go and hire these sort of people that can need these sort of roles. And I think that sort of thing is where production, where broadcasters and commissioners really do need to step up, because they've got the infrastructure to know what's needed and to help particularly smaller indies out.
Yeah, very good point. Sharing resources it's such a shortcut, and again it's being transparent with the channels, isn't it, and saying this is what we're doing, and also it's costing us money, so you should know about that. Yes, thanks for your comments, everyone. So a couple of people commenting on this sort of outsourcing of extra responsibilities, which is really interesting. At Arrow, they have compliance researchers, which are amazingly helpful, apparently, across the board. There are COVID supervisor duties being thrown at PM, says Claire, especially once you're qualified as one. It's become a dual role, especially when there's no money for an extra person. That's not ideal. Somebody actually, John McKenzie, where was your message? You said if you wanted to train up as a coordinator or JPM, are there opportunities out there at the moment? I suppose that's it. We need to be talking about this. Like, how do people who want to be doing this or like move from the editorial stream or get into the industry, who are the people supporting them, and how can we support them into these roles which are so desperately needed?
I think we need to, like you said earlier, we need to take this conversation forward, and we need to organise ourselves, and whether that's by setting up a separate working group that tackles these things and collaborate across super indies, broadcasters like the BBC, or even kind of latching on to something that's already in existence, like a Coalition for Change. Is there a subgroup within that we could start doing some work and move from kind of talking about it to actually making a change? Because there are lots of talent managers in organisation and heads of productions that if we got our heads in the room, I'm sure we could move the dial forward pretty swiftly. Yeah,
and having those juniors come in and stay for a long time and nurture them, that's where you're going to get your investment, isn't it? Getting people in and then moving them along.
We do this already to a degree. We recently solved a problem with a casting researcher on a show. We couldn't find anyone from production management or coordinator, got a casting researcher on the show, basically just to manage all the COVID health declarations and everything else that went with it. So there's, people are doing it in pockets and being resourceful. We just need to be a bit more systematic about it and organised and signpost.
There are little courses around. I know the Production Managers Association does a couple of courses about budgets and about how to be a coordinator. And I think if you want to work in television, they kind of do a demystifying the industry thing, and that's a very good resource.
And skill set, they do their little courses. So there's a lot out there. And over the years, when this subject has come up, because it has come up several times, particularly around coordinators, there have been big initiatives, whether it's around, I think we did something around apprentices a few years ago. The BBC often runs things which accelerated people and career transference, etc. But it needs to be sustainable, and it's not something that's you do it for 6 months or a year or two and then you forget about it. It's something that's we have to accept is ongoing. It just needs to be a core part of how we do business, in the same way that the BBC's journalism course has been going for decades. We need to have big initiatives like that are going for decades on, because we're going to continue to need to move people through. I also think we need to accelerate people. I was reading when I was looking at this, being a production manager, saying, it takes 5 to 10 years to become a production manager from a coordinator. I thought that's just too long, especially the rates that people are being paid at. You shouldn't have to take 5 to 10 years.
I don't think it takes that now, though.
I know it doesn't, but this is the sort of stuff when you're reading these sites. I'm sitting from outside, I think I don't want to sit in the same thing for 5 to 10.
If you've been a coordinator for 5 years, can you call me, please? Because I will absolutely hire you. We will find you a role as a production manager. If you have 5 years experience as a coordinator, there is a job for you for sure.
There are so many out there. There are so many out there who, but I think the worry, from what I understand, in some of the bigger companies, is that because there's a lack of production coordinators, they don't want to step up the production coordinators to production managers, because then they're left with no coordinators. So they get left, and
But we haven't actually touched on that danger of over promotion as well. I think in times like this, when demand outstrips supply, people are being promoted because there is simply no one else, or to entice them away from somewhere. And then that's leaving this vacuum underneath as well, and also putting people in a position that perhaps they're not ready for, which is setting themselves up for a failure. And that's not good either. I mean, I'm sure all up for promotion where it's due, but as long as they are supported.
Couldn't agree more. There's a distinct risk that will happen, and like, you know, you can predict that there will be some issues where people come under immense pressure and may as a result walk away from the industry having been promoted too soon.
There's a lot of responsibility, you know, there's a lot of responsibility in terms of the importance of the things that you're dealing with. It's, you know, if you're dealing with health and safety and you make a mistake, it could be potentially extremely difficult. And if you're dealing with insurance or, you know, any of those things, they're all so important, and that pressure and that responsibility kind of needs to be taken by people who have the confidence to do it.
Yes. And I would also say that
by their higher ups too, you know,
what I would say that
up to the next stage.
Vanessa, on that point of responsibility, because I hear you loud and clear on that, but do you find, what I find quite odd, or not odd, because I know production management mentality, which is we see a problem, we want to solve it, and we take things on. But a lot of these areas like health and safety, COVID, ultimately, when you read the guidance, we're not accountable for this stuff. The producers are accountable for this stuff, and yet we seem to take it, you know, as seriously, if not more seriously, a lot of the time. And is there something we need to do about that, which is like reminding people of accountabilities? Because it's always, you know, the budget, the health and safety. If you read the small print, it's not us who's accountable.
No, but I think the reality of the situation is that it does often fall to the production.
Of course it does, yeah.
That's sorted out. And I think you're right. I think absolutely there needs to be accountability. I think there needs to be I think the creative side of the industry needs to have some more education in what I might be stepping into dangerous territory here. It's recorded, but no, I think in a lot of instances, I do think that understanding what we do, and that health and safety isn't just a production thing, and that you know, making sure that the shoots are compliant for insurance terms is not just for the production team to worry about, I think is really important. And I think all the legwork that goes into that is generally falls to the production team, largely because when things are under pressure, the production teams are, as you say, want to solve the problem, want to fix it, need to get it done, and so they sort of step in. We're like water, we kind of fill up whatever gap is there. Yeah, I stole that from someone. I can't even remember who I stole that from, so I can't even name check them. But yeah, I did.
It's good. It is that thing, though, isn't it? It's that thing that runs through our DNA, which is we're like creative problem solvers. You know, we see a problem, even if it's not anything to do with us, we will fix it. You know, we will always say yes or how rather than no. And actually, we as a community, I think we do need to learn occasionally how to say no to certain things, like no to the wrong behaviour, no to unrealistic demands on our time.
I mean, I do think creatives are under increasing pressure at the same time. So it's the, you know, the budget's being squeezed, the schedule's being shortened, mean that all the things that have to happen in order, the millions of things that have to happen in order to get a production up on screen are being squeezed. And so things are sort of, you know, and that's how they're sort of traditionally coming down. But you're absolutely right. We need to be able to push back constructively and to be able to say, you know what, guys, this isn't really my responsibility, you know, and giving people the space to be able to do that within companies. And I'm trying to check in more with my teams and to check in more with the junior members of the production teams and say, it's okay to tell me if there's a problem, if somebody's being mean to you, which is another thing that happens, because when things go wrong, sometimes tempers flare, and that's difficult to deal with, especially for more junior members of the production teams, and keeping an eye on people's hours, you know, it not making it their responsibility solely to come to you when there's a problem, but you trying to make sure that if you're getting emails at 5 o'clock in the morning, that you understand why you're getting them at 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, and just trying to create a safe space for people to say, help, without them feeling like they've failed, because usually it's not failure, it's just volume of stuff to do.
And there are a lot of companies out there who are doing much better at that. I'm really aware that there's obviously a lot of issues that we're bringing up, and it's very we all know the things that should be put right. But I am really keen to tell people that these roles that you're talking about, all of you, they are brilliant, aren't they? It's a great industry to be in as a production person. These things have just been coming a long time coming, and it's all come to a head because there are a lot of things that aren't quite right at the moment. But what we're saying is, we've now outed that conversation about pay, and you can find Jamie's letter on all the links to sort of sign that's going to broadcasters. But if we're all more transparent about them, that would be great, being transparent about rates, etc. With saying that we need employers to be kind of looking outside of the usual CVs. So think about finding people in bars like Nicola, or from the travel industry who have the great transferable skills, or when people like us put people forward to your roles, please look at them and listen to why we think they would fit, and then give people opportunities. And then it's about valuing our production managers, isn't it? And those, I think those things are all really achievable to make things a lot happier. And I don't think it needs to be this big dark rant, which it has been needed, but now needs moving on, as we've all said. So I think all of those little small things that we've discussed, speaking up for people. Actually, Vanessa, you had a really strong opinion about that, about sort of backing people, right, and really supporting.
I also think status is important. I think the status has gone with the pay, so I think the status has kind of slipped a little bit, in the same way that the pay has slipped a little bit. I may be underselling both of those things, but I think blurring the line between production and creative is really important, because it's all part of the same thing. I think having production in editorial meetings, because how are you supposed to create and achieve a vision and achieve a production if you don't know what's going on in the editorial conversation? I think having the line producer or production manager's name on TX cards, making sure they're in the front end credits, not tucked at the back, making sure that it's just simple things, making sure that they're invited to award ceremonies or dinners to celebrate things, that they are as important as your other heads of production. They are as vital and as crucial as your other heads of production. And I think that's massively important.
Yeah. And on that note about awards, actually, we were chatting with our friends at the Grierson Trust, and they've asked us to mention an unsung hero awards that they are running. So if you go to griersontrust.org, they would love to have nominations from production managers and of all levels. So please do look them up, as everything that we're saying is this sort of unsung hero element. I can't quite believe it's 1 o'clock. There was always going to be a lot to talk about, right? But thank you. Please keep the conversation continuing on these comments, and you guys been amazing, and thank you for being so honest as well, and talking about everything from your own personal opinions. But please do have a look at the comments afterwards too, because I think there'll be a lot there that you might want to look at. But thank you, everyone. I do feel positive about moving this all forward, and I just hope that we can all keep talking about it. We certainly know there's a lot of noise surrounding it for good and bad reasons, clearly, but I see it as a positive thing, because we can now strive towards change. And it's so good to know that these conversations are being had, and even up to broadcaster. Nicola, I'm so thrilled. If anybody missed you saying that, Nicola has said that a broadcaster is now talking about this and has been talking about pay brackets, right, in production.
Only yesterday we talked about not only expanding the production team back out again to have more people, and also the rates.
Fantastic. Amazing.
Look out for that letter, everyone. Sorry, look out for the letter. Sign it, and sign it with the company name as well. We need as many people signing this letter as possible, because if anyone's going to listen, they need to know what's going on.
Actually, Jamie, on that, Jamie, I think it'd be good if you can kind of open that. I haven't seen the letter. It'd be good if it can come to our side as well, because I think that we, as on the editorial side, need to show support as well. That it's not, I'm very mindful of this kind of us and them culture, which I don't think is very, very productive. And I think it's important that people on our side of the business are also signing that and saying, like it's impacting the work that we do, but also we support our colleagues because they need to be given the respect that they deserve.
Totally, this is going to this is going to everyone, and yeah, this isn't just for production people to sign. This is for the whole industry, and the more editorial people we can get signing it as well, I think that gives it more weight anyway. So absolutely,
Yes.
just share it and sign it, and well, if you agree with it, it'll be out next week.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Tamara, Faraz, Ness, Nicola, and you all. If you missed any of this or you want to share it, it will be on our Talented People website soon after I've got some lunch. Yeah, really appreciate your support on the subject. And if we don't have your CV, whoever you are, whatever industry you're in, please send us your CV link on our jobs board on talentedpeople.tv. And yeah, we will see you for another session really soon. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and for all these guys and your time. All right, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. It's coming home.